Hello, and welcome to Device Week, a podcast where journalists from the Gray Sheet talk about issues they're reporting on for the device and diagnostics community. I'm Gray Sheet editor David Fillmore, and I'm joined by reporters Danielle Farouk and Sue Darcy, as well as senior editor Reed Miller. This week, we'll talk about the first firm to publicly jump on FDA's new Expedited access pathway, a new official at CDRH, questioning the 20-hour 510K, and company and product updates. First, let's go to Sue. Sue, so we have a sign-up for FDA's Expedited access program, is that right?
Yes, Dave. This week, Cohera Medical announced that its Sylys surgical sealant has been designated by FDA for the agency's new Expedited access pathway for approval of the device. This is the first firm that has announced FDA has selected it for the EAP process, as it's being called, which is likely to shorten the length of time for the sealant's PMA approval. The sealant is a novel device intended to stop anastomosic leakage in patients undergoing gastrointestinal surgery, and FDA told the company there's no other alternative product like it on the market.
So how will Cohera actually be looking to leverage this pathway? In other words, what's their proposed development plan?
Yes, the company plans to gather effectiveness data on the sealant's complication rates and leak reduction, and then at an interim analysis point in the pivotal trial, if they can show benefits from the reduction of complications with the product, then they can initiate the PMA review process earlier.
Thanks, Sue. It should be a good first test for the program. It's just getting going, so companies may be looking to see how it goes. Danny, why don't we move to you now, keeping with product news. FDA recently approved Cerebral assessment system's Cognivue system. What does that system do, and what does that mean for the device industry?
So yeah, Dave, the agency approved a de novo application for the device that was submitted by Cerebral assessment system, as you mentioned, back in 2013. So the Class 2 device is a non-invasive system that helps detect early signs of dementia in patients over 55, and essentially just requires them to interact with a computer program. However, FDA did issue some special controls for the device, because they're concerned about the hardware safety and data accuracy. But the company hopes that with a growing elderly population, they think that their system could become as common for patients as annual tracking of your blood pressure.
Danny, you also covered some news about FDA adding a new staff member who will lead the agency's focus on the needs of children when improving a device.
So yeah, there are a number of high-level positions that are still open at CDRH, but according to a staff memo from Jeff Shurant recently, Basum Pires, I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, will join the agency on August 24th as the new Chief Medical Officer for Pediatrics and Special Populations. Now, this position has been vacant since 2013, but it's also a very important time to get that position filled because FDA is working on a number of guidances, and in particular, they're working on a guidance to allow adult clinical data to be extrapolated to approve devices for children, and they're also trying to address a number of factors that make it harder to approve devices for children. And Dave, you did an interesting interview this week on how the courts perceive 510K programs. Could you fill us in about what you found in your research?
Yes, Danny, thanks. This week I spoke to medical device attorney Jeffrey Shapiro about a blog post he wrote for the FDA Law Blog, which is published by his firm, Hyman Phelps McNamara. Shapiro has this long-running pet peeve focused on the fact that federal court opinions, usually in product liability suits for devices, continue to state that the average 510K review takes FDA about 20 hours total to complete. He says that's patently ridiculous for current 510Ks. It comes from a 1996 Supreme Court decision looking at a 1980s cleared device. So the estimate was perfectly appropriate for the 80s, he says, but essentially the legislative and regulatory changes since then, particularly since 1990, have been vast, and it's much, much more time-consuming now. So we spoke about the issue in my interview, including what he says is why it's important for the courts to update their view of the program and the potential impact on case law. So something to look out for. Let's switch to Reed now. Reed, you did some profiles of some up-and-coming companies this week. Could you tell me about what you were looking at?
Yeah, Dave, we managed to do some profiles of some companies this week that we haven't written about much in the past. The first one was about Xagenic, which is a company built on technology spun off the University of Toronto that is developing a point-of-care molecular diagnostic. This would allow doctors to do tests in about 20 minutes instead of having to send the samples down to a lab and wait a few days for the answers. And they're optimistic that this could really change Healthcare. They're focusing for now on infectious diseases, but they think it could expand into other areas where testing would be helpful at the point of care. The other company that we looked at this week is called Comprehend. And now they don't create a medical device. What they do is they have a software platform that works in the cloud to track and manage all of the data a company is collecting as part of their clinical trials. And it allows, all the different parts of the team to access that through a, proprietary dashboard and make decisions as the data comes in from around the world. And they're really gearing up for the upcoming Drug Information Association meeting in Washington to show off some of their new features. So we got a chance to talk to their CEO.
Great, Reed. Thank you. Let's keep on the business news and wrap up with that. Maybe the biggest mergers and acquisition news in the device sector last week was Bayer's sale of its diabetes care business to Panasonic Healthcare. It's not much of a surprise. There's been talk for years of Bayer's plans to unload the business, which sells glucose meters, strips, and lancing devices. But the $1.5 billion sale is noteworthy for the sector.
Dave, is Panasonic Healthcare part of that well-known consumer electronics company?
Yes, well, partially, Danny. Panasonic sold a majority stake in the healthcare division to a private equity firm a few years ago, but it retains 20% ownership of the unit. So of note, Panasonic Healthcare has actually partnered with Bayer and manufactured some of their diabetes devices for years. So this deal fits right into what they're already doing. But basically, it gives them a global footprint. And they say they want to be one of the largest diabetes care companies out there. I think that's all we have for today. There are a lot more details on this and all the topics we spoke about today and a range of other issues at our website, thegraysheet.com. You can also follow us at Twitter @Graysheet. For now, thanks for listening.